Okay, thank you, Lorna. I'll just expand this. Right, so I'm David. I used to work for SRUC in the consultant division, but I also did a bit of teaching, and I was involved in a little bit of knowledge transfer with research as well, particularly with soils. But now I have moved to the Soil Association, and I'm entirely doing knowledge transfer now, no consultancy at all. I'm still doing some contract lecturing for SRUC, so I still have my hand in here a little bit. And I'm going to talk about our particular programme, which is called the Future Farming Scotland programme. And it is, it's just one big project. I don't have to fill out timesheets or anything. It's fantastic. And it is funded by the EU through the CAP, the Knowledge Transfer and Innovation Fund. The Scottish Government put in some money, get money from QMS, Quality Meat Scotland, Forestry Commission Scotland, Prince's Charity, the Prince of Wales Charitable Foundation, and also the Soil Association itself. They have this scheme called Innovative Farmers, and I've got some booklets there. They've put a little bit of money in towards it as well. So in Scotland, this is fully funded, and the knowledge transfer programme is free. In England, because they don't have access to all these funding sources, the farmer actually has to pay to be part of the field land, part of Innovative Farmers, which might come up in the discussion later. Perhaps if the farmer pays, they maybe value the advice a bit more. I don't know, I'm not sure, but we can talk about that later. So, so the Future Farming Scotland programme, it's pretty much, half of it's kind of your standard knowledge exchange stuff, the stuff I used to do when I worked for SRUC, which is the kind of the full day events and half day events, what we call walk and talk events. So a group of farmers turn up at a farm, they get a talk from a specialist, and they walk about the farm and they look at things, and then at the end of the day they fill in an evaluation form and they go home, and that's pretty much it. There might be a 6-month follow-up on the evaluation form, but kind of the one day or half day event that's kind of your classic knowledge transfer. What's different about what we're doing is the field lab projects, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail, which is a specific topic. I'm doing one with Brian on soil biological quality. I'll talk about today about one that we did on pigs. And the project might have 3 or 4 meetings around it. So a farmer has a go at doing a trial, and you hold meetings around about the trial, and you see what's going on, and you get feedback. And I'll speak about that in a bit more detail. And also we've got the conferences. So the conferences sort of pools everything together. It pools the findings from the full day events, half day events, and the field lab projects as well. So we'll probably do a grassland conference this year. And because of our funders and the way that we're funded, we have certain topics that we have to cover. So soils, livestock, woodland, horticulture, and because the Soil Association are funding some of it themselves, we have to include organic farming as well. But it's not, just because it's Soil Association doesn't mean it's all about organic farming. It's about sustainable farming, and it's about a broad range of things. I think a really important thing about our programme is that it's an evolving programme, and we do take into account what people say in evaluation forms, and we do have meetings with people within the industry, and we really take into account what they're saying, and that helps us design our meetings, what we're going to talk about, and what topics we're going to cover, and what speakers we're going to use. And that sort of, oh, hello. So that evolving programme very much comes from evaluation forms, follow-ups, and industry liaison. And we get all this money from all these different funders, so we have to report on what we're doing with the money. And the way that we report is pretty much your standard: how many people are coming to your meetings, what do they say in the evaluation forms. But another really important part of our reporting is all the meetings that we have within the industry. So the knowledge transfer and knowledge exchange is not just straight out to producers, it's to RSPB or QMS or various other people. So you're getting messages, you're getting exchange of knowledge at lots of different levels. And it all feeds into each other, and it allows the programme to evolve. So I described that we have the kind of the walk and talk events, the conferences, and the field labs, and the rest of the talk will just be about field labs. And the whole concept of field labs is that many of the best ideas in farming come from the farmers themselves. They have a bit of a funny idea or a bit of a novel idea, and they want to try it out. So what they do is that they might have an idea. An example I've just had, I was talking to Brian before, just before lunch, and one of the organic farmers actually wanted to try Mintel in an organic farming situation and try and measure the effects that would have on yield, cost, and soil biological quality. So he came up with this idea. I talked to Brian about it. I also talked to the farmer about it, and kind of with this kind of exchange of knowledge between producer, the facilitator, and the researcher, you come up with an idea of a field trial. Throughout the field trial is completely reliant on the farmer doing it themselves, which can be a bit of an issue. But throughout the course of the field trial, you measure progress, and then you report on it at the end, and then really importantly, you tell people about it. You tell them what works and what didn't work. An issue I think that we perhaps do have with some of the farmers with these great ideas are often the really go-ahead ones, that once they see something's really working, they'll just switch the trial and they'll change it so that everything's using the treatment that seems to be working. So trying to keep them on track is quite important. And so the field labs, they work. There's funding for, as I said, a researcher, a specialist. So the farmer's an idea, I can chat to a researcher, the farmer can chat to the researcher. Between us, we come up with an idea. It pays for diagnostics, so I can get soils analysed, I can get bloods done, I can get various things done to measure. It pays to hold 3 or 4 meetings, so some catering, teas and coffees and things. And also really important is communication, so it's the comms. So it's all very well holding trials or getting information or finding something out, but it's really, really important to communicate it to the wider public. And in the Soil Association, we're really lucky. I have someone, well, the Future Farming Scotland programme have one comms person 1 day a week, which is absolutely fantastic. So we can really spread the word. The Innovative Farmers is the English version of the field labs. So there's actually a website that we can use to spread the word as well. And then our conferences, other conferences, I talked at a Scottish Smallholders conference. We spread the word, and also we can write articles as well. So that might appear in NFU Leader, could appear Press and Journal, Scottish, it could appear anywhere. So it's spreading the word is really important as well. And this is the Innovative Farmers website. So it's a few teething problems, but basically I would set up a group. This is feeding pig silage. People can then log into this group, and there's forums, and they can share information, they can take photos and things, and it will be wonderful when it's all working, but it's not actually working just yet, but we'll get there. So that's another tool that we've got for the knowledge exchange. So I've kind of given you an overview of the programme. I've talked in a little bit of depth about the field labs themselves, and I'll now talk about one specific field lab that's now finished. It's important to say at this point there's a range of different field lab types. So there's the kind of the really basic information ones, and then the ones that are doing something quite new and novel and interesting. So I'll talk about this one that's quite new and novel and interesting, but the kind of the basic ones include one that we did on rush control, and that was really basic grassland management. So when I sort of inherited the job and I inherited this field lab, I thought it was a little bit simplistic and basic, and it was, it's basic grassland management knowledge. But there was a huge amount of interest from farmers. We actually had to turn people away from meetings, and people valued it really, really highly. The valuation form feedback was fantastic, and it was interesting that it doesn't need to be something really fancy and new. It can be really basic grassland drainage, soil structure, nutrients, lime, the really basic stuff. But when you put it into a field lab setting and you've got a group that come to various meetings, they kind of have some ownership of that advice that you're giving them. So rather than just having a one-day meeting and you're telling them what to do, you're telling them to do something, or you're having a discussion about it. They go and try it. You then, maybe the next year, you have another meeting, they come back and they say, well, I tried this and it worked, and the other guy tried this and it didn't work. And I think it's a more effective way of transferring knowledge. That was the kind of basic one. I'll go to the sort of the new, a little bit more complicated and novel one. which is feeding silage to pigs. And this is an idea that came from the farmer. He's called Chris Walton. He farms down the Borders, and he's actually an organic farmer, and he was paying an awful lot of money to buy in organic soya as a source of protein. And what he wanted to do was firstly improve his financial resilience by reducing his production costs. The soya was expensive, it's a volatile commodity, you can't really budget for it because it goes up and down every year. There are some issues with soya environmentally. You know, you're importing it from another country. He would rather grow the protein in his own place. And in theory, feeding silage to pigs should improve health, which may improve livestock resilience through promoting health. And the facilitator for the field labs at the time got Gillian Butler from Newcastle University as the main researcher on that. And one of her PhD students got involved as well. So, well, why not? Well, pigs are I remember one of my clients, I used to be a consultant at SAC, one of my clients had outdoor pigs, and he wanted to feed silage to pigs, and the nutritionist kind of said, well, it's not really that much trial data. And monogastrics, you know, you don't really want to feed them silage. Okay for dry sows, but grown pigs, not sure. And really the thinking is that you feed monogastrics concentrates, soybean meal. If you do feed them silage, it's such a bulky feed that actually digesting that feed has a bit of an energy cost, so it's not actually that efficient. Soybean meal is a concentrated feed, but pigs actually do in the wild eat green leafy things, so why not? But then pigs are actually hindgut fermenters, so that they're not strictly monogastrics, and there are bugs in the hindgut that can digest fibrous feeds. You can produce silage at home relatively cheaply, so as imported the price can go up and down. And there may, because pigs are hindgut fermenters and it's a natural thing for them to eat grass, there might be some gut health benefits to feeding a bulky forage. So there may be, if you feed very finely milled feed, you might get gastric ulcers. If you're feeding a bulky feed, it might be better for the guts. So this was the really challenging bit, trying to set up a trial that the farmer could run himself and not deviate from it and not have too many variables. So this was the tricky bit. And so the researcher went to the farm and split the pigs into two groups. So they were all about the same age. It was a mixture of boars and gilts, but there was an equal mixture in both groups. There's also a mixture of breeds, so there was Tamworth crosses and Duroc crosses, but both groups had the same mixture of crosses. And the first group, they fed proprietary feed pellets, which was just the normal feed, just ad lib. The second group, they fed ad lib access to the pellets, but it was a mixture of half pellets, half barley. By doing that, you're changing the energy protein balance of the ration, so you're really giving them proportionally a lot more energy and depriving them a little bit of protein. By depriving them of protein, it should encourage them to actually eat the source of protein, which was the red clover silage. So you're reducing the amino acid. It encourages protein-seeking behaviour. The other studies that have been done, they tend to keep treatment A is your normal diet, treatment B is your normal diet plus some silage. Well, they're getting their nutrition from the normal diet, so they're not seeking other sources of protein. And the way that this was set up was, there was an initial meeting. The farmers came out, a group of farmers came out, the researcher came out, and they kind of discussed it a little bit. The second meeting, they discussed it a bit more, and they actually decided on how they were going to run the trial at the second meeting. So, yeah, that's an indication of what was happening. By restricting the protein, they will probably should incentivise them to eat the silage, but it may also incentivise them to go and root about and eat some invertebrates, which are actually also a very good source of protein. And how do you know if their nutrition has been fine? Well, you don't really, but you can kind of tell from the quality of the meat. So this was the pork that was from the carcasses that were fed that particular diet. If they weren't getting enough protein, then there would probably be a lot more fat deposition and the lean would be a lot less. And as it happened, they looked fine. So the nutrition probably, they were getting enough protein. At the second meeting, they also discussed what they wanted to assess. So they had a big list of things that they want to assess. They want to know what the life weight gain is. They probably won't put on as much weight as quickly with a silage diet, but it's cheaper, so how does that work? The killing out percentage, if they're eating a very bulky feed, the carcass is full of guts basically, so if there's a poorer killing out percentage, it's not as economically viable. If it impacts the grade of the carcass, so if the carcass is very poor because the diet has made the lean and the fat deposition different to normal, or the shape of the carcass, you might get penalised, which is a bad thing. Cost of feed, so it might be a lot cheaper to feed them, but it might take them longer to finish. So what's that cost in terms of grams of live weight gain? Gut health. The way of measuring that is quite simple. You go to a slaughterhouse and you pull out the guts and you measure them, and a longer gut is apparently a healthier gut. So that's another thing that could have been measured. And lastly, very importantly in agriculture, but isn't often done, is what does the end product, what's it taste like? So if it tastes horrible, there's absolutely no point in doing it at all. And anecdotally, apparently feeding them silage made the pork go a bit sour, so we really needed to measure that. In the end, we only actually measured live weight gain and eating quality. But this may be scaled up by Newcastle University. They may do it properly on Nafferton and actually measure all these things. So the results are here, and basically this is the control diet. That was the live weight gain. And this is the control diet, the silage diet, the experimental diet. And basically for the Duroc crosses, there was no significant difference in weight gain with the two different diets. So the error bar with the letter A next to it, it's pretty much the same. So that was quite unexpected. We did expect there to be a difference in weight gain, and we thought, well, we then have to drill down and figure out the cost per gram of live weight gain and all these things. But actually, surprisingly, there was no real difference, which was quite amazing. There was a bit of a difference with the Tamworth crosses, but the numbers were actually very small. I mean, yeah, I don't know. But for the Duroc crosses, certainly there was no significant difference. So important, the headline thing is that all pigs grew better than expected. And for the Duroc crosses, there was no significant difference in weight gain between the rations. So that was great. So it was cheaper. They seem to be finishing about the same time. They're putting on the weight. Great, but if it tasted horrible, there's no point at all. So we had, the third meeting was actually at the Newtown Cookery School in Edinburgh, which was great. It was my first meeting. And we got, instead of being in a cold shed or a cold field, we were sitting in a nice kitchen eating nice pork. And we got Queen Margaret University have a gastronomy MSc, so we got lecturers, teaching staff from there to help us get a quality criteria scoring system. 25 people at the meeting. They tasted two different types of pork, and they saw the appearance and they could smell it, and they scored the two different types of pork. And the scores were, the one was the least likeable and 5 was the most likeable. And I won't go into how all these separate things scored. I'll just give you the highlights. But basically, when you added all the scores together, flavour, aroma, texture, all these things, they were pretty much the same. There was no real difference at all. I mean, there wasn't a lot of difference. So 5 being the most likeable, 1 being the least likeable, not a huge difference in overall score. And on top of all those 6 quality assessment criteria, they also had to say what their overall preference was. Was it meat A or was it meat B? And 27% said meat A, 27% said meat B, and 46% couldn't tell the difference, so had no answer. So effectively, there was no real impact on taste either. So we could say that in that trial for these organic pigs with mainly Duroc genetics, there wasn't a significant impact on weight gain, and there was also no impact on taste, which means that there is potential to maybe reduce imported protein by using homegrown silage for pigs. And this was a sort of a look-see. It was just a farmer having a go, a researcher getting involved, some facilitation, some meetings around it. Newcastle University want to scale it up and do it with a proper trials team, do it properly, and get a paper out of it, hopefully. But importantly, that is kind of the higher end of the field labs. You also get the lower end with the basic, the really basic knowledge. And there's a lot of value in both of them, I think. Okay, thank you.